Hi, and welcome to Two CPAs and the Mic, the podcast where we talk tax, finance, and all things related to business. Whether you're a business owner, working professional, or someone who wants to start a career in accounting, this is the podcast for you. Hosted by CCK Strategies partners Jeff Frable and Sara Mays, we dive into relevant business and tax matters with working professionals to make these topics less intimidating, relatable, and dare we say fun? Let's get down to business.
Welcome back to another exciting and informative episode of Two CPAs and the Mic. We cover relevant business and tax topics. We apply straight talk, unexpected humor, and practical information without the jargon and stuffiness of your granddad's CPA. Welcome in, everybody. Hey, Mays, what's going on?
What up, Jeff Frable?
There we go. There's Mays. Hey, KP.
It's a Monday morning.
Good morning.
We're still getting there.
We are. So KP's in the house. Mays is in the house. We have a very special guest today. We are going to be talking about, again, the CPA profession, but a different angle this time, kind of different considerations when thinking about getting involved with the tax professional. Who can do tax returns, things of that nature. We're going to talk about what an individual should consider versus a small business owner. And we will also talk about, how do you deal with the IRS? I mean, are they just the big boogeyman, or are they just real people too? But we will get into that as well. But as always, I am Jeff Frable. I've been a partner here at CCK Strategies for 25 years. I have my trusty co-host, Mays.
Hey, I'm Sara Mays, and I've been with CCK for 18 years. And today we also have KP with us. I'm going to steal Jeff's thunder a little bit.
Thank you. Also known as Christy Porter.
Do you mind KP, or do you hate it?
I don't, but I'm indifferent.
Then we will call her Christy.
Yes.
I learned that diplomacy from Sara earlier.
Yes.
I'm indifferent.
I thought we were
I'm
being
indifferent.
cool by giving her a nickname, but apparently not.
Well, cool
We'll just
is
keep trying new ones
It's
out.
relative.
Okay.
I'm indifferent.
All right. All right. So with that, Sara, take it away.
Hey, also today we have with us on the mic, who I'm so excited that we have Jordan Tudor, who I do call JT because
Jords.
Jords, JT. You know,
I go by an array of names.
yes,
You do.
Yes, you do.
So
Awesome.
did
Mostly
JT
awesome.
take his initials from the original JT?
Yes, he did.
100. Sure enough. But Jordan's been with CCK for 14 years now, just celebrated last month. And she actually started off as an intern, and I trained her. And I mean, she's like one of my
see a
favorite
pattern
people
here.
at the one of my favorite people at the firm. So we're so excited to have you today. Jordan, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm so excited to be here. I'm just so thrilled that I get to be part of this.
Yes.
I have been here, like Sara mentioned, 14 years. I started here as an intern, and I have learned so much along the way. So I'm super excited about this topic because I talk to new clients and different people all the time about this exact situation.
Well, let's jump in and just talk a little bit, not necessarily about CPAs versus other designations, but just I was getting prepared for this, and I kind of Googled a little bit because I think I know the answer to this, but I went to the official source, Google. Who can prepare tax returns? And really, anybody can prepare tax returns. And so our listeners may not know that for sure, but that's something they need to understand, that as a CPA, we take a test, we get certified, but the other end of that spectrum is that pretty much anybody can be, any Tom, Dick, or Harry can be doing that tax return for you. So being credentialed and being experienced does matter. There are different representation rights. In other words, I can represent a client before the IRS versus, someone that's not credentialed. But Jordan, you have a credential. It's not a CPA, but it's still a very important credential. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I have my enrolled agent certification, and that is a certification you actually get through the IRS. They have a testing program. It's a series of 3 tests, but it's more focused on tax law, whereas a CPA is focused on a different variety of different things in accounting, audit, tax, and the enrolled agent certification is really just focused on tax. And so the 3 tests that you have to take, they're all related to the different tax laws.
And it allows you to have representation to Jeff's point, in front of the IRS.
That's correct. And you can also, have power of attorney for clients. You can represent them. It's also really helpful for different states. When you have the enrolled agent certification, you're allowed to go into different states and help represent. Whereas if you just have a CPA, it's based in the state that you received your certification.
You guys, I have a layperson's question. I always hear about signing the return. I know CPAs can sign the return. Does an EA, Jordan, can you sign returns?
Yes, EAs can sign returns.
And I think pretty much anybody can sign a return as it relates to having a one of those identification numbers. Part of what you're getting at, Christy, is how we as a firm deal with our internal control. And so not just anybody can sign a return. You have to be credentialed in some way. And so that's once Jordan got her credential, then she got the privilege of signing
Let's call
returns.
it that.
Privilege.
As long as you're the person that's supposed to sign that return is a paid preparer.
That's right.
Right.
And so even if I have, I'm just don't have any experience at all, but I did it and got paid for it. That's why I sign it. So Jordan, I don't know anything about the EA test. So you said there's 3 parts to it, and then how do they score that? I mean, what's a passing rate? Or
there's only I can't remember exactly how it's a bunch of questions, and then it actually, when you take the test, it tells you if you pass or failed right then. You can only miss, I think it's like 10 questions.
Okay.
It's just a bunch of questions. Some that are really, you would think, oh, okay, I understand that question. And then some that are really difficult. So you definitely have to study for it. You can't just walk in and take it. I think I took mine after 12 years of tax work, and I still had to prep because there's just different things involved with it.
Well, it's interesting because we did an episode earlier about the CPA exam and it taking weeks and weeks to find out if you passed or not. But in the EA world, it's instantaneous. You know right away if you pass or fail.
You do. And you can only take one test a session, but you know right away if you pass or fail, which is good and bad because, but they do let you take it within another, it's different than the CPA in that you don't have to wait so long. So you can actually take it again pretty close to the first time you took it. I think it's like 48 hours you can take it again right away.
Okay. Well, congratulations on making that.
I passed all 3 the first time, I must say.
I didn't want to
Did you hear that? Okay. Way to drop it in there, Jordan.
Yeah.
So, it's definitely,
we know who we're dealing with.
But, I do think having a designation, especially when you're helping people with returns, it means that you're invested and you want to learn. So you definitely want to trust somebody that does have some kind of certification. You don't want the Tom, Dick, or Harry that Jeff mentioned doing your returns.
Yeah.
The certification at least means that someone's engaged enough to want to understand what they're doing and how they're helping their client.
And know the ramifications.
Right. And we're on the line.
Yeah.
We're on the line. Our license can get pulled if we aren't doing the right thing, if we're not ethical.
If we're ethical, that's right.
So with the EA, are you responsible for continuing education?
Yes. Similar to the CPA, you have to have credits every year. You can get suspended if you don't have enough credits. There's also a rolling credits. You actually have to have quite a bit of credits every year to keep your license up.
So the main topic for today is really talking about when someone needs a CPA and what that looks like and how they get involved. And just to kind of set the table, with CPA firms, you have different types of firms, not necessarily different types as much as different sizes of firms. And we've had previous episodes where we've talked about different levels of service, whether you're a small firm or you're a big firm or a small service provider versus a big service provider. Maze, just start us off kind of walking through the different sizes of CPA firms that if one of our listeners was just starting to look into this, what they might expect to see.
Yeah. Usually you'll see just a one-man stop. That's a sole proprietor or woman. Sorry. Yes. and they're just really just taking on clients just on their own and doing prepping the returns on their own, giving any kind of consulting. Usually what we see with a sole proprietor is that they kind of like have a niche and they stay fixated on that because where they feel comfortable. And then you kind of branch out into a small firm, and that's usually it's varying
Varying sizes.
Yes,
yeah.
varying sizes of what's considered a small firm. But that's usually when there's several people in the firm working on tax returns, or, even there may be some small administrative role in there as well. And then you've got your local firms, and that's even a little bit bigger, more people, and they probably offer maybe one or two lines of services and along with besides just tax. And then you're getting into your regional firms that that may have several locations, and then a number of people. And then you got your national firms, what we like to call in our industry, the Big Four.
The Big Four, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny that you mentioned the size of the firm. There's probably some national firms that see us as a small firm, even with 120 some people.
Yeah.
So it's all kind of relative, but there is kind of, the bigger you get, the more lines of service there are, the more different things that you have underneath the same roof that can take care of you, almost like more of a one-stop shop.
Right.
And quite honestly, the cost goes up, or your investment with that provider goes up as you get into the bigger firms. And that's just kind of the way it works.
Right.
And so, which I think is important for us to kind of talk about why a CPA or an EA is valuable. And it's just not a designation you just charge a lot of money for, but what are some of the things that you all have seen that CPAs and EAs do that create that kind of value?
That's a great question. I think even just personally, recently, I was talking to my brother, and he's thinking of starting another business venture in the health care world. He's a nurse practitioner. He was asking me questions. Currently, he's been a W-2 employee. So like most of us are. So he gets a W-2, he can type it into a tax software, and he's done. Well, when he starts asking me business questions, I'm asking him questions such as, well, how much are you thinking you're going to make? And he's like, well, I already can see that I'm probably going to make X amount of dollars. Well, when you start getting to a point where you're not going to just look at your W-2 and file your return, and you have to think about what you're doing, it's probably time to engage a CPA, because there's probably options out there that you may not realize. And that's what we've spent our time in college and time in our career of learning. And so you definitely want to have access to somebody who can set you up correctly to get going, so you can automatically know you're going to save money.
Right.
Well, let's kind of walk through some of those scenarios and kind of separate it between an individual versus a business owner. And when we're talking about individuals, what do you normally see as a time to start engaging a CPA? What kind of events happen? You referenced the W-2. Basically, that's someone that just gets a paycheck from their employer.
Yep.
And those returns, that reporting tends to not be extremely complicated, at least for us. I mean, some basic input, but what kind of things happen to those individuals that would cause them to want to get a CPA or an EA?
I think it's definitely whenever as you continue on and you, even through W-2 employment, you work in your job and you start making investments.
Yep.
That's a time when you might want to engage a CPA to help you.
And investments could include just investing in the stock market, but also real estate.
Right. Any type of investments. When you start adding investments and you're trying to grow your wealth, it's probably time to talk. Just like when you might consider a financial advisor, you would also want to consider a CPA to help you.
And know what the tax ramifications are inside of those investments.
Exactly. Yep. And then there's also when you get to the point where you're looking at, I might want to buy a rental property, or I'm ready to start investing in my kids' college. Do I need to get them a Roth IRA? What does that mean for them? Do they have to pay taxes? Just, as you're working through life and you start having questions and you're looking towards the future. I think when you're looking outside of just of your W-2 paycheck, that's when it's time to start thinking about these things, your kids' future, your future. What do you want that to look like? CPAs can help you get there, because we want to help make sure that we're saving you tax so that you can continue to do those things.
Right.
And covered with compliance too, because there's a whole realm of new things that could pop up that you may, I didn't know I needed to file that. I didn't know I needed to do it by this certain date.
That's right. And you don't want to figure that out when you get a letter from the IRS first.
No.
We'll get there.
We'll get
there.
But the one thing I wanted to point out is that when we're talking about the value of a credential and a value of a tax professional, there's tangible and intangible. I think I mentioned this in a previous episode. Your tangible value is I was reporting X. Now you help me change it to Y. And
Right.
there's a difference there that stays in my pocket. But the other part is this intangible value of I don't know what to do with my K-1. I just inherited a bunch of money and I think I'm going to pay tax on all that kind of
Right.
stuff. Or I'm buying a house and I don't know what to do with this kind of stuff. And just the fact that we know what to do with it is valuable.
Oh, that's a great point, Jeff. I had actually that happen not long ago. I have a client whose mom is getting elderly and they were going to go ahead and just move the deed over to, she only has the one child, my client, get the client in the deed, the name, transfer the deed to the client. I was like, wait. There's things we can do here to save on taxes. We don't want to own this thing yet. We want this to pass over to us via a trust from your mom, and she's still well enough to get one signed. Let's save some tax there. There's some benefit of, it's called a step up in basis. We can get into that later, but it's just another tool to help you save tax that's fully legal as long as you do it the right way.
Right. Because in that scenario, it is where they can, I'm going to sign this deed over just because I want to take care of my mom. But there could be even outside of a tax situation. Social Security and Medicaid and Medicare could all get up in that too.
Right.
And
That's very right.
You want to be very mindful and you not just want to just do something spur of the moment because you think it's right. You need to know all of the different areas that could affect just that one event.
Right. One small decision can the savings is, we don't know because it just depends on whatever's being transferred. But
yeah,
the savings could be endless. You definitely want to make sure these things all have an impact, and just one little change can make the difference of hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Well, that's why the credential and the professionalism is so important. You mentioned a situation you had recently. I had one where we bought a new dryer, and my wife and I thought we were replacing a gas dryer. So we bought a gas dryer.
Okay.
When we could have sworn we had a gas dryer, and we found out we had an electric dryer. And so, I don't know how that happened.
That's why you're
And that's why I was a CPA. But the story is, the purpose of the story is that we needed a plumber to take the cap off of our gas line. So equate this to someone who doesn't know anything about tax trying to do their own tax return, right? So we called the plumber and he said to me, and this is where we go into the value and the investment that you're making. He said, well, they have to charge you for the call, the service call and for at least an hour, blah, blah, blah. So it's going to be $250. And he was literally in my utility room for 10 minutes.
Wow.
And so, but I didn't care because what could have happened if I would have taken that cap off the gas line, could have blown up the whole house.
Yes.
So it all goes back to value and what you know and how you can help people. So I think that always comes into play because, like we were talking about before, when you start to engage these professionals and you start to become more complicated.
That's right.
There's the need to invest your money wisely and have people help you that can take care of those things.
That's exactly right. And even what we do in our profession is we're looking at income tax, but we are not shy of hearing about how much people are paying in real estate taxes. So I recently had a client, it was last year, who was, having a hard time with their real estate tax increases. And I'm like, fight that sucker. Get online, print this form out. As soon as they send you that increase, you've got 30 days to contest it. Why not? Even if they meet you in the middle, you're still saving tax. And they're like, I would have never thought of that. And it's like, well, that's all I think about. It's how I can save tax.
I'm such an exciting individual.
Happy to help you. Yeah, that's right.
But Jordan, you have a way of making the layperson feel really comfortable because what you do just naturally, the way you think, it's what you think. To you, it's just common sense. But you never assume. You never assume that your client or anyone you're talking to has that same level of knowledge. So those of us who don't think that way, we never feel silly. We never feel embarrassed when we're talking to you about these really complicated things that just rolls off your back and you just do.
Well, thank you. Well, I hate to spend my money and I hate to pay my taxes.
Yes.
So
you just don't, right?
So I do, but only as much as I have to.
There you go.
And and thank you for that, Christy. And that's really, I want my clients to feel comfortable.
Yes.
With me so we can talk about these random things that maybe aren't income tax related, but just that a knowledge share. Just that's what we do.
So you spoke about what an individual may want to encounter before they bring on a CPA or an EA. Let's talk a little bit about a business owner, because it changes
That's right.
dramatically. I think anytime anyone wants to get into owning their own business, but walk us through a little bit about what that initial conversation looks like. And I know it can range. There is a wide range on the spectrum, but
Sure.
just kind of, someone that's like, I think I want to do this and ultimately leave my job so it pays all the bills. But what kind of conversation do you have with them?
I think the first conversation I have is first hearing about what they're looking to do, what industry they're going into, just, what are they interested in pursuing? And then once I hear that, and it's also who are they doing it with? Is it by themselves, family members, partners? I need their full story, what they expect, especially for that first year, so that we can understand how they should be structured best for tax purposes, for not only for savings, but also, as Sara mentioned earlier, for the compliance side of that. Because if you can get set up the right way, it makes your life a billion times easier. We can help clients get their books going. We can, all these things that will save heartache initially, we can get that going. So really every new client I meet, I need to hear, what are they doing? How long do they think it's going to take to get off the ground? Just, all the normal things that you would want to know to help somebody make sure they're making a good decision.
So when you talk about making that good decision, are you the only person that should be in the room having this conversation with them, or should there be other people in the room as well, like other professionals?
I think it depends. I think as far as the tax side goes, maybe they just need us, but I think if they have other professionals they trust, that they're good. A lot of times people are very private and they don't want to have a full room of people. So I would never advise on something I don't do, so I'm not going to advise on things much outside of income taxes. But I would definitely say depending on what all they need, we can definitely also work with them if they have an attorney, they have a financial advisor, if they have other professionals that they need they have a good bookkeeper, controller, maybe they're not there yet. Maybe it's just them starting out. They may not need a whole myriad of people, but I think if they do have some of those people, then we should be in the room with them as well.
So what do you think might be the biggest obstacle for someone choosing to work with a CPA?
From experience, my mother-in-law, it's so funny because she deals with high-end infants with severe issues, pregnant mothers that have to hear bad news. But you tell her about taxes and she freezes. I mean, she can't, I call them work papers, just her tax documents. She just tries to get them all organized and she just gets really uncomfortable. And I'm like, okay, let's slow down. We're just getting some tax documents together. She's like, oh, I don't think that Edward Jones sent me my statement. And I think really just be yourself and look for somebody who you can connect with. No one wants to talk to their tax person. I understand that. But find someone who you trust, who you feel like understands what you're needing out of your relationship with your tax person. Because I do think that if you can get to a comfortable spot where you can just talk to them, you'll see we're not scary people. We want to be helpful to you. So I think you just have to find somebody you feel like is a fit for you.
Well, and I think you bring up a great point, Jordan, because if anyone listened to a previous podcast, we talked about some CPA stereotypes.
Ooh.
And the whole purpose of this medium, this podcast, is to communicate relevant business and tax information.
Yeah.
Straight talk. No, I'm not going to go. but do it in a way that is not jargon filled and code. We're not code heads.
We're not
Right.
code heads.
And sometimes that's needed.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it's just like you said, it's people needing to feel like they can relate, that they can just find someone who will take care of a situation for them. Because just like your mother-in-law is with taxes, that's the way I am with any kind of repair in our home. I would rather just pay someone to take care of it,
Right.
so I don't have to think about it, because I'm just going to screw it up and lose my salvation in the process.
That's
I mean, so it's very. Oh, no, we're not going to get into a theological debate on that one. But it's important for people to feel like they can trust somebody,
Yeah.
and especially in a situation when you're talking about money
Right.
and a financial situation.
And I feel like a lot of times, unfortunately, we do kind of there's a stigma around preparers that you don't really ask them anything. You're just going to get your return. You're going to get your answer, and that's it. And you're not going to ask them any questions because you're not going to understand the answer.
Like a transaction.
That's exactly right.
So go into a little bit more detail about that. What makes you different than someone that takes that approach?
Well, I think for me and my clients, it's important for me to make sure that my clients understand where their tax answer is coming from, what part they have in it. So that for one, we make sure it makes sense, because there's always things that when you talk through, there's different issues maybe that happen with the client. There's different issues in their books that we can figure out because it just maybe doesn't make sense. And if I can help them understand where that answer comes from, then they can help me understand if it's right or wrong.
Yes.
And if we do need to dig into it more.
Because even technology, I mean, QuickBooks could double transactions all day long. And
That's right.
that's where we're not.
Or
where
they
a
might
transaction is somebody just sees what's in front of them and plugs it right into the tax return and you can just shoot out an answer. But we're going to dig in.
That's exactly right. Where they'll close out some accounts that were on a different balance sheet, and they'll put money into their own company. And I've seen where that's been treated as income because they put money in from an account that they had closed down from a business that maybe they had shut down, and they moved that money to their current business that they're working, and it gets treated as income. So a lot of times what we'll do too is we'll go back a couple of years when we first meet with the client to see and talk through their returns, look at their income, expenses, their credits, figure out if there's something we can do to help the past, because those are things that sounds like, oh, how could anyone ever count income that's not income? That's terrible. But it happens. And unless you know what you're looking at and your tax professional is looking at that with you, you wouldn't know.
Well, we always talk about being proactive and strategic with tax planning, preparation, and consulting, because it expands through all those areas. Because like you said, we ask over and over again when we come up with an answer, does that feel right?
Right.
And you'd be surprised how many times you may have this big income number and you go, does that feel right? And they go, no, it doesn't. Well, okay, why? Now,
Right.
There's reasons. Sometimes there's very good reasons why it doesn't feel that way. Maybe they've been paying down debt or buying equipment or something like that. But there's also a lot of times where that's not the right answer, and we need to dig in and go further. So, Jordan, you've mentioned you've used the term books quite a bit. Talk a little bit about, if I start up a business and I'm kind of doing it on my own, I think it's good practice to wait down the road to get a good set of books going, right? Is that what you're telling me? Okay.
No.
What
A
are
resounding
books? What
no.
are books?
So books are what you're going to use to track your business income and expenses. So it doesn't matter if you think you're going to grow this business to 50 million or you're going to grow it to 500,000 or even 50,000. You've got to start off on the right foot. And to do that, you've got to set up a business bank account. And you've got to connect that to some kind of books. There's Zero, QuickBooks Online. So what that is it's basically your bank account in a system that's tracking the income coming in and the expenses going out.
It's more than just deposits and checks.
That's right.
And credit memos and all of those things. It really is taking what came through your bank account and sorting it through to what's truly income and truly expense.
And it's not your personal account. That's your personal account. It should not ever be intermingled with your personal account, because if we ever do have an issue with the IRS, we don't want to give them our personal account. right? We don't want them to have anything to do with that. So we want to make sure we start off right and that our business activity is in its own account. Especially, people can get sued. You don't want your personal account attached to any of that.
Right.
You must have a business bank account, and the best time to do that is when you're just starting your business. Not to say we can't help you if you've already started, you've not made that separation yet, but you've got to get it separate.
Best practice.
Well, and it's not just a matter of having those numbers for a tax return.
Right.
It's way more important than that, because how are you going to manage your business as you go through the year without a good set of numbers?
Right. And how do you know if you're making money if it's all going through your
And where's
personal
your money
account?
going?
And where, yes.
Yeah.
So if I'm a small business owner and I'm just starting, or I haven't taken the time to pull that information together, what kind of things what kind of people or situations am I looking to that would help me in that kind of situation? Am I looking for a bookkeeper, or am I looking for someone a little bit more higher end, or what?
I think it depends on your comfort level. So I have a lot of clients who there's different ways you can, our CPA firm, for one, we have trainers. If client just wants to learn how to do their books on their own, they're able to get online easily. They don't mind looking at basically bank account activity and coding it. Then you can get trained by a QuickBooks professional. Different CPA firms have them, trainers, ours has it. Or if you're completely uninterested, like Jeff is with his dryer and his washer situation, and you don't want to get the wrong cords or type of connection, I would say that you would definitely want to get started with a bookkeeper. And there's outsourced bookkeepers. There's different people you can engage, different prices depending on what you're actually looking for them to do. If you just want books for a tax return, that's one price. If you want books that a bookkeeper is going to do and meet with you quarterly, that's probably a different price to walk through your profitability. It's just, especially when you're starting out, it's what you need it to be. So I think your engagement and how involved you are with your books can change over time, but you definitely need to get started with a set of books that is your bank account for your business.
Yeah, because as you grow and as you become more profitable, there's the need to, in essence, forecast as well.
That's
and
right.
Be looking forward as opposed to looking backward. And again, there's not everybody does that. You really need to figure out what you want and then find the professional that's going to help you through that process.
You guys have talked about a couple of things. You've talked about a startup business. You've talked about individuals. You've talked about more mature businesses. Going into the startup and a business that's a little more mature, Jordan, you said no matter where you are, startup, get someone to take care of your bookkeeping. And then there's also people that, when you're talking about taxes, there are some firms that are a little bit more prepared for startups rather than another.
Right.
From my perspective, outside of the walls.
Sure.
What's your recommendation? Does every startup need a CPA from the beginning?
I feel, and this is my opinion, I do feel like a startup, you should talk to somebody. Even if you're not going to engage with them to do all the work for you to do your returns, you should engage with someone who does understand how to set up a company, how to advise you just on how to get started and be on the right track.
So kind of walk me through that process a little bit, Jordan. Let's say I've never worked with a CPA before and it kind of is intimidating to me. What does that initial conversation look like? I mean, am I going to get billed $500 for that? Or is it just a conversation, then we see where we go? But what generally happens in that kind of situation?
I can speak to how we do it at our firm. We don't typically charge for an initial consultation, and we really get a lot of our work comes from internal referrals. So it's referrals from our current clients. It's referrals from our teammates. Different teammates will send us referrals. And so that initial conversation we typically like to see you. So we'll do that on a Teams call or in person, depending on where the client is or the prospect client. And we just talk to them and see. And a lot of times we can identify how we can help and we're a great fit. And then other times we're identifying, hey, here's some ideas we have. We may not be the perfect place for you yet, or maybe you need a little bit more time to get everything together, but we're definitely we can help advise even if you don't engage with us. And that first initial meeting is free.
Well, and the key to it all is value.
Right.
And so it may be that we know completely what you need and how to do it, but it doesn't make sense from a billing perspective for us to be involved, and someone can do it because we're not creating the value that pays for those fees.
Right. And we want to more than pay for ourselves. And that's why we're still here and still doing it, right? I mean, otherwise we would just work for the IRS. We'd work in that government tier system. Hopefully wouldn't be looking at layoffs. And that's how we would do it, right? Yes. I mean, but we are on this side of it. So we do get to be on the tax saving side. And if we can't save you money, we don't want to take money from you and not give it back. So yeah.
We just want to create value.
That's right.
Well, your comment about the IRS reminds me of a conversation I had with one of our founding partners years and years ago. And I said, if I worked for the IRS, I'd be the coolest person that worked there. And he goes, you would never work for the IRS because you're just not cool. So, anyway, but yeah, let's transition to talking a little bit about the IRS here, because we wanted to kind of touch on that. Let's say I get a notice from the IRS. Would you say that the best thing to do is to stick it in the drawer and not pay attention to it, or do something different with it?
Yes.
I would say you light it on fire. No, just kidding. Don't do that. No, you definitely need to pass that to whoever's helping you with your returns.
Or
if you don't.
Yeah, if you don't.
If you don't have somebody, that's when I absolutely think that you should reach out and engage, just because those IRS letters can be very daunting.
They can.
Just depending on what kind. I mean, you can get in what I would call an easy one saying, oh, we changed your mailing address, because they have to notify you of that, to we're going to levy your account.
Yes.
So,
the levy one is scary.
Yes. And so I think reaching out to just finding somebody, if you're not currently engaged with a professional.
Right. We did get a new client that way. We had a client who had didn't realize that their 1099s were reported through their side gig. And so they had spent a lot of money, so they thought their net was probably not there after the income they received after the expenses they were out was pretty low. But because they thought, well, I didn't really make money on this, I don't have to report it. Well, that's wrong. So anything that you get that has a 1099 or a W-2 or looks like an official form, the IRS gets those too for the most part. And so they don't even have to have a person looking at that. Those forms go directly into their system. And so it triggers the IRS that when your return hits, if they can't see something that they have received on your behalf, then they will send a notice. And a lot of times, if they think that you are neglecting to include certain things on your return, they will charge you an inaccuracy penalty.
Well, and the other thing about that is when they make assumptions about what is or is not on your return, they always make those assumptions in their favor.
Oh,
that's
yes.
right.
So it very well could be worth the effort and the time and the funds invested to have someone else look at that and see if there's something that can be done.
1,000%. And also, this happened to me last week. A client had forgotten to give us a bunch of their W-2Gs that they had.
And what is a W-2? What is a W-2G?
What is a W-2G?
So, when you're at the casino.
No, I don't, Jordan. Tell me about it.
Well, when you're at the casino and, you're winning big, you're hot. You're on fire.
You're on fire.
Well, when you make over a certain amount, I think it's 600, but sometimes it's even lower if it's jackpot. I don't know. There's different deals, but they'll tell you you're going to get a form. Mm-hmm. That form, it has to go on your return. And
because it reports the amount of the income, right?
Exactly. And they do not report the losses.
Yeah.
So if you are not reporting that on your return and the IRS gets that, they're going to send you a big fat bill and they're going to assume you had no losses. That's all wins.
All right.
That's another time you should engage a CPA because there are things we can do, especially in certain states, to help with answers.
Yeah.
Well, and you kind of alluded to it earlier, but if you are, especially if you're a sole proprietor and you get a 1099, that's going to the IRS. They're going to match it.
Right.
And if they don't see that income on your return, they may eventually get to the point of recalculating your return.
That's
where
right.
they include all the income but they don't put any expenses in there.
That's right.
And so if you have a side gig where you're generating nothing but revenue, I'd like to know what that is. But
We all would.
So there's a lot of value in having someone that can basically read that language.
That's right.
More than anything else. And there's also the concept of managing emotions through that process. Can you talk a little bit about that and how engaging someone with a certification can help in that process?
Sure. Anytime you get an official letter from the IRS or your state government, a lot of times there's scary words like Sara mentioned, the levy word, and they, in fact, can levy your bank accounts. But when you talk to your tax professional, we can do a power of attorney. We are definitely able to get to the IRS. We have different tools. We can get to them pretty quick, way quicker than calling their main lines. And we will help get your account put on hold so that they stop sending those letters to get this to whatever your issue is to get it resolved, whether it's an amended return, an explanation of some sort that they need to finish processing something. We can definitely, I think our goal is to put you at ease. And we can do that for you. We just need to have the notice to know how to do that for you.
And unfortunately, that's something that, the IRS is not ever going to stop sending out letters, ever.
Right.
And I think that's one thing that we absolutely can do is put our clients at ease because we know and we've worked with and we have expertise in working with the IRS. So we know what they're asking for when they're asking for it, or at least know where to go find the answer.
That's exactly right. And sometimes we know whenever we're talking to an agent if they're going to be able to help us or not, where you may not know that.
Right.
And sometimes we just need to call back the next day and get somebody else who can help us. And if you hadn't been doing this for a bunch of years, you wouldn't know that that's even something you should consider.
Yeah, at the end of the day, again, don't put your head in the sand. Don't keep sticking it in.
It's not as bad as that notice usually says it is. Most of the time.
And the IRS can make mistakes at times as well.
And they do.
Yeah.
They do.
They're humans just like us.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, Jordan, if you, in closing, as we talking to our listeners and they're still kind of on the fence about, if I need a CPA or not, what's one piece of advice that you would give them to think through?
Why not just go talk to somebody that's professional and see what you think? They may be able to tell you things you don't know or things that could help you, or maybe not. But at least if you have any of these other things we're talking about, and you're not just W-2 employee, like you've got anything else going on, just consider it. The worst that can happen is you don't get any benefit and you just don't go back.
Yeah, that's right. And generally speaking, most service providers will say, look, I can't help you, or it's going to be too expensive, or here's what I can do, and here's your investment in this process. So it's just going in and having a conversation doesn't necessarily commit you to a full-time process or
That's correct. Yes.
But it's still worth it. And I think you'll still walk away with a nugget.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I think you mentioned referrals before, but I think it's very important that though, if you're in that kind of situation, ask in your friend group or your professional group, who do you use? Who do you talk to?
Yep.
Because anytime we can get a warm referral or a warm introduction, the relationship seems easy from the very get-go.
That's right. Yep. And if it's somebody you trust, ask them. Ask somebody you trust who they use, and if they feel like it's beneficial to them, just to get their take. But it's definitely something that it shouldn't cost you anything. I don't think I can't speak to every firm, but I think you can even ask that question going in is, hey, is this going to be really expensive for me? But I definitely think it's worth it.
I think, Jordan, Jeff, before we close, one of the common themes that I've heard the three of you say throughout this episode is, I'm going to simplify it, problem solving. Yeah. I mean, it seems like you're asking a lot of questions. You're asking people to think about something from a different perspective. And to me, that is the trusted advisor consultative approach that I know CCK has as a firm. And I'm hoping that the entire profession is taking that same stance. Yep. Because you're right. What you guys see and deal with on a daily basis, that keeps people awake at night.
Yep.
And being able to lean into someone that you can trust really does provide a sense of peace.
Yep.
Wow, Christy, I was going to ask you to give us one last nugget of information advice, and you came through right there. So you were reading my mind. Thank you so much. But we hope this has been interesting and informative to individuals that don't have a relationship with a CPA or an EA or even business owners, so that maybe it doesn't seem complicated. It doesn't seem overwhelming, and know that there are professionals out there that just want to make a difference in your situation and in your life. So, Jordan, thank you so much for joining us today. You are a light of sunshine on this Monday morning that we're recording.
Always.
That's really kind.
Yeah. But thanks for joining us. If you want to email us or connect with us in some way, shape, or form,
you can email us at podcast@cckcpa.com.
And Sara, I generally run through the thank yous, but would you like to take over the thank yous this time?
Yes. First, I'd like to thank our sponsor, CCK Strategies. They're an amazing, amazing firm. We absolutely appreciate them. Our wonderful producer, Christy Porter. Thank you so much. My wonderful husband, Robert Mays, for providing the intro and outro music. To our wonderful Clarence with Tulsa Internet Marketing Services, we thank you so very much for all of your support. And last but not least, our very own Lee Dollenberg for helping us on the IT side. Thank you so very much.
Rockstar.
You going to close us out?
You go for it. You're
All
on a roll.
right.
You're on
Next time, we look forward to seeing you on 2 CPAs and the mic. The information provided on this podcast is for general informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute accounting, tax, legal, or financial advice. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, laws and regulations change and individual circumstances vary. Always consult with a qualified CPA or professional advisor before making any financial or business decisions. The views expressed by the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of any organizations they are affiliated with. Listening to this podcast does not create a client-accountant relationship. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge and agree to those terms. And that's a wrap for this episode of 2 CPAs and the mic. If you found today's episode helpful, please subscribe, share, and leave us a review. Have questions or ideas for a topic? Reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Email us at podcast@cckcpa.com.